For decades, Benny Hill was more than just a comedian. He was a phenomenon, a whirlwind of energy and laughter that swept across television screens in Britain and around the globe. Families would gather to watch him, audiences would tune in across time zones, and the unmistakable strains of yakety sax would signal that chaos, mischief and comedy were about to erupt. Yet behind the laughter, behind the applause, behind the mischievous grin and slapstick gags, there was a tension building, a tension that would culminate in one scene that changed everything. What was meant to be a harmless, cheeky joke would ignite a storm of criticism so intense it would shake the very foundations of British television comedy. One sketch, one brief sequence, would become the catalyst for a cultural debate, a confrontation with societal change and ultimately the end of an era. Tonight, we uncover the scene that took the Benny Hill Show off the air for good, and explore the man, the myth, and the controversies that defined his legacy. Alfred Hawthorne Hill, born on January 21, 1924 in Southampton, England, was an unlikely candidate for comedy stardom. His father ran a surgical appliance shop, a practical, methodical existence, but Benny inherited the showmanship of his grandfather, Henry Hill, a circus clown. From an early age, he was surrounded by contrasts, the ordinary rhythms of daily life and the extraordinary world of performance. Benny's youth was marked by curiosity, observation, and adaptability. He attended Taunton School and after leaving he drifted through a variety of jobs: a milkman, a bridge operator, a driver, and even a drummer. Each role, mundane as it seemed, added to his understanding of human behavior, timing, and the quirks that would later inform his comedy. Hill had an eye for the absurd in the ordinary, a skill honed through years of watching life unfold in its unpredictable ways. When World War II erupted, Benny's life took a dramatic turn. Drafted into the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, he trained as a mechanic, drove trucks, and operated searchlights in the perilous days of the Normandy campaign. But it was his transfer to the Combined Services Entertainment Division that would truly define his future. There, amidst the horrors of war, Hill learned the delicate art of making people laugh when laughter was a lifeline. He discovered the power of timing, improvisation, and connecting with an audience, skills that would later define his career. Hill's first real foray into entertainment came with radio. On October 5, 1947, he made his debut on Variety Bandbox, a show that allowed him to experiment with comedic timing, character work, and wit. Radio, a medium dominated by sound, required precision. Every pause, every intonation mattered. Hill thrived, quickly making a name for himself as a sharp, adaptable performer. Television soon beckoned. Hill's first TV appearances in 1950 allowed him to combine his radio-honed verbal humor with the visual comedy he had long admired in music hall performers. By 1955, The Benny Hill Show premiered on the BBC. Hill's genius lay in blending traditional slapstick with visual gags, parodies, and recurring characters. Jackie Wright, a diminutive bald-headed actor, became a fan favorite as the unwitting target of Hill's antics. The runoff chase sequence, accompanied by yakety sax, became an instant hallmark, a visual symphony of chaos and laughter. The 1970s marked the height of Hill's fame. Viewer numbers in the UK soared, and international syndication, particularly in the United States, introduced global audiences to his unique brand of humor. Emmy nominations in 1980 and 1981 underscored his appeal beyond British shores. The show's format evolved. Hour-long specials replaced weekly episodes, Hill's Angels added energy and glamour, and complex sketches demonstrated his expanding creative vision. Yet, as the show reached its apex, cracks were appearing. Cultural perceptions were changing. What was once seen as cheeky, playful, or risque was now scrutinized under the lens of evolving social norms. Critics began questioning the portrayal of women and the reliance on sexualized humor. The introduction of Hill's Angels, once an innovative addition, became a focal point of debate. It was a beauty pageant parody that would become the fulcrum of controversy. Women were chased, objectified, and subjected to Hill's signature slapstick humor. On paper it was classic Benny Hill, fast-paced, absurd, and meant to provoke laughter. But the context of the late 1980s transformed it. Changing societal attitudes, feminist discourse, and a more critical media landscape meant that the sketch was no longer harmless fun. It was seen as emblematic of sexism in entertainment. Ben Elton, a leading voice in alternative comedy, condemned the sketch. He argued that Hill's humor perpetuated harmful stereotypes and influenced social attitudes toward women. His criticisms were widely reported, sparking debates across television, magazines, and newspapers. Supporters of Hill dismissed the attacks as excessive, highlighting the absurdity of blaming a comedy show for societal ills. The debate became a cultural flashpoint, raising questions about freedom of expression, the evolution of humor, and the responsibility of media creators. While Hill's public persona was larger than life, his private life was surprisingly modest. Despite earning millions, he lived frugally, rented rather than owned property, and avoided public discussion of his romantic life. He never married, proposed only twice, and maintained an intensely private personal existence. Even as his fame soared, Hill's habits remained grounded. He shopped frugally, walked rather than drove, and patched clothes instead of buying new ones. This contrast between the flamboyant on-screen entertainer and the reserved off-screen man added complexity to Hill's legacy. Behind every chase sequence and comedic skit was a meticulous performer who understood timing, audience psychology, and the nuances of human behavior. By the late 1980s, a perfect storm had formed. Ratings were declining, production costs had soared to nearly £450,000 per episode, and the controversy surrounding the beauty pageant sketch intensified. Thames Television, which had invested heavily in Hill's productions, faced a difficult decision. In 1989, after 21 years of creating iconic comedy, The Benny Hill Show was cancelled. Hill's response was a testament to his resilience. In 1991, he launched Benny Hill's World Tour, aiming to bring his sketches to an international audience. Only one special, Greetings from New York, was completed. Even in the face of declining health, heart issues, and kidney failure, Hill remained committed to his craft, performing with the precision and humor that had defined his career. Benny's first taste of fame came via radio. On Variety Bandbox, his wit and timing captivated audiences. Listeners laughed at his clever wordplay, but Hill craved more. He wanted to see laughter, to hear it, to feel it. Television offered that. By 1955, The Benny Hill Show premiered on the BBC. Audiences were enchanted. Physical comedy, visual gags, and clever parodies combined with Hill's razor-sharp timing to create something entirely new. The show was anchored by recurring characters: Jackie Wright's stoic reactions, Fred Scuttle's absurd mannerisms, and the chaotic energy of Hill himself. And then there was the runoff chase sequence, the dizzying finale of every episode, sped up with undercranking and set to yakety sax. It became instantly iconic. Fans couldn't get enough, and international syndication spread Hill's laughter worldwide. But the very traits that made the show famous would also sow the seeds of controversy. The 1970s brought Hill international fame. Millions tuned in. In 1971, viewer numbers peaked at over 21 million. Emmy nominations in the U.S. signaled his global appeal. Hill's creativity flourished with hour-long specials, elaborate sketches, and the introduction of Hill's Angels, a troupe of glamorous dancers who added energy and flair. Yet, as his success soared, critics began to question his comedy. What was once cheeky and fun began to feel outdated. The portrayal of women, once dismissed as harmless, drew sharp criticism. By the late 1980s, societal attitudes were shifting, and Benny Hill, the master of physical humor, faced a challenge unlike any before. And then came the sketch that would change everything. It was a beauty pageant parody, intended as classic Benny Hill, fast-paced, absurd, and cheeky. But in the context of a changing society, it became a lightning rod for criticism. Women chased, objectified, gags that had once been harmless suddenly seemed offensive. Ben Elton, a voice of alternative comedy, accused Hill of perpetuating sexism and encouraging harmful societal attitudes. Media outlets debated, audiences polarized, and suddenly, laughter was overshadowed by outrage. Was Hill's comedy a relic of the past, or an unjustly maligned art form? Supporters argued that blaming a television show for real-world issues was ridiculous, yet the storm could not be ignored. Regulatory bodies, media critics, and public discourse increasingly questioned the content of a program once beloved by millions. Even as the controversy raged, Benny Hill lived quietly, frugally, and privately. Millionaire yet modest, he rented rather than owned, patched rather than discarded, and walked rather than rode when possible. He never married, had no children, and remained intensely private about his personal life. This contrast, a flamboyant on-screen entertainer and a restrained, private man, added layers to his legacy. Hill's genius wasn't just in comedy, it was in understanding people, timing, and the human heart. By the late 1980s, declining ratings, skyrocketing production costs, and ongoing criticism made the show unsustainable. Thames Television, despite its decades-long investment, had to make a painful decision. In 1989, The Benny Hill Show was cancelled, ending an era. Hill tried to adapt with Benny Hill's World Tour, filming sketches globally, but only one special, Greetings from New York, was completed. Health challenges, a failing heart and kidneys, compounded the struggle. Yet even in adversity, Hill's dedication to performance never wavered. Benny Hill's contributions to comedy remain monumental. His timing, his slapstick, his inventiveness, and his ability to connect with audiences transcended generations. Even controversial sketches are now studied as markers of cultural evolution, a reminder of how comedy reflects societal change. In 2021, The Benny Hill Show returned to British screens, almost 20 years after its last broadcast. Nostalgia, curiosity, and the enduring appeal of laughter ensured Hill's place in television history. Benny Hill was more than a man with a mischievous grin. He was a reflection of his era, a master of his craft, and a comedian whose influence resonates to this day. Every chase, every gag, every laugh captured the essence of a performer daring to push boundaries while entertaining millions. Even the sketch that sparked controversy cannot overshadow the joy, creativity, and innovation Benny Hill brought to the world of comedy. His legacy endures, complex, celebrated, and unforgettable.